Hello, everyone. This is the Insider Threat Podcast, where we explore issues with the human factor and its impacts on information security and business. I'm your host, Steve Higdon. In this episode, we cover several news stories, some listener-provided articles, the business side of Insider Threat, and more. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back. This is episode 13 of the Insider Threat Podcast for the week of August 7th, 2017. This episode is actually ISO 3103-1980 compliant, since I'm recording in the evening this week. I suppose it might be considered bad form to achieve compliance requirements for this standard when I usually record in the wee hours of the morning, but I don't know. No judgment here if that's your thing. So I suppose that someone at Black Hat or DEF CON was promoting the show for us because we got a huge influx of new listeners over the last 2 weeks. What's been going on in my life? Well, nothing too out of the ordinary. Summer's coming to a close soon and the kids will be back to school. Now, I mentioned Jenny Ratcliffe in last week's episode, and I discovered that she has a podcast about social engineering that I really, really like. See, I have this problem when I start listening to a new podcast where I feel obligated to start at the very beginning and kind of binge listen until I'm caught up, and hers is absolutely no different. If you guys get the chance, check out the Human Factor podcast by Jenny Ratcliffe. So thank you all for your continued support and your feedback. I think some of you answered the call last week in sharing the show with at least one person who could benefit from it because, as I said, we've had quite a few more listeners. So you know that sound. It's time for your InfoSec question of the week, where Google is king and the prize is non-existent. The question last week was, the movie Office Space has been used to compare work environments in many industries. What wall decor can be found in almost every resident or workplace scene? The answer was Navy SEAL posters. And now that I've shown you that, you'll hone in on those posters every time you see the movie, I promise. It's definitely one of my top 3 favorite movies of all time, and I chuckle to myself every time I watch it and see those posters. It really adds to the profile of the characters, in my opinion. Anyway, congratulations to Michael from Longwood, Florida, Aisha from Nashville, Mary from Alabama, and Robert from Larkspur, California for getting the correct answer. I just wanted to note that I find it pretty interesting that there were just as many female listeners who got that one correct as males. Not that it means anything at all, probably, but I think it's neat anyway. Here's your question for this week. Anonymous is a hacktivist group that ran several targeted hacking campaigns in recent years and is known for being decentralized and seemingly random in their overall aim. In 2008, the group made their debut through an operation against this target. Send your response to infosecanswer@gmail.com. Be sure to include your first name, location, and the hashtag Hubbard. So in the news this week, and probably the biggest headline as far as information security news, is the malware researcher who was responsible for stopping WannaCry ransomware was arrested in Vegas after attending DEF CON. We spoke about Marcus Hutchins, aka MalwareTech, when WannaCry was happening, but it looks like he's been taken in on charges that he wrote and attempted to sell a banking Trojan called Kronos on a recently seized dark web market called Alphabay, which took the place of its famous predecessor, the Silk Road. For anyone that doesn't already know, these dark web marketplaces are used to anonymously buy and sell many things, to include illegal products and services. This is generating quite a bit of buzz in the security community. A few days ago, Hutchins was still viewed as a hero, and many people claim that the actions of the Department of Justice are either unfounded or their thoughts are mistaken. To quote another UK-based security professional and friend of his, Kevin Bowman, I hope I got that correctly, he said, "I know Marcus. He has a business which fights against exactly this, bot malware. It's all he does. He feeds that info to US law enforcement." One way or the other, let's hope this gets figured out quickly. I did hear a rumor today that during a police interrogation, Marcus actually admitted to writing the Kronos malware. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll provide a very detailed article about this from Wired.com in the show notes. In other news, many are suspecting that the shadow brokers are actually an insider in the intelligence community. For those who don't know, the shadow brokers are either a single person or a group of people that leaked NSA hacking tools to the world. Well, at first they were trying to sell them, but then they made the tools public. Matt Suiche, that's S-U-I-C-H-E, I'm guessing on that pronunciation. I'm really bad with names. I don't know if you guys have picked up on that yet. But anyway, Matt presented a talk at Black Hat this year about his analysis of the shadow brokers' dumps, and he believes they're coming from a malicious insider instead of an external nation-state attacker, as many have suggested. He isn't just saying any old insiders either, but current or former government contractors. Even though the language used by the shadow brokers is broken English, which would suggest that these are Russian hackers, Matt thinks this is actually a tactic being used to aid the nation-state narrative. His belief is strengthened by the fact that the shadow brokers have expressed anger toward the NSA's Tailored Access Operation Team and its members, threatening to reveal their identities. They seem to know quite a bit about this team, which suggests that they might have some inside knowledge. Whatever the case, if the shadow brokers are actually a single individual or group of individuals that are either current or former NSA Equation Group employees, that's pretty troubling. The first article this week was shared on the Insider Threat subreddit, and it comes from Joshua Morales at IT Security Central. It's titled, Creatures of Habit: How Behavioral Analytics Can Deter Insider Threats. This one discusses the habits of people and the fact that those habits or behaviors can be tracked in order to develop a baseline to measure against. This is the secret sauce of user behavior analytics, and it gives organizations the ability to detect actions that fall outside of that baseline. Tracking the behavior of people isn't just something that we do in information security, though. It's been going on for quite some time in the online world as well as the physical world. Retailers, both on the web and in actual stores, use customer relationship management systems to track their customers' shopping habits, and some even put GPS devices on shopping carts to track the routes that customers typically take in the store, all with the goal of strategically placing items in a way that you're more likely to buy them. Online, this is done through tracking cookies. If you've ever wondered why something you were just looking up on Amazon showed up in the sidebar of Facebook, now you know. Now we've discussed using UBA solutions for insider threat, but how can it be used to prevent ransomware attacks? The article is interesting in its explanation of this. We believe that WannaCry started from an external email that had an attachment in it. If the reception of such an email was deemed to be outside the norm by a UBA solution, it could have been flagged, and even though the attachment was open, it could have been done so in a way that it would have been isolated from the rest of the network. A few episodes ago, we talked to Greg Maudsley from Menlo Security about their isolation solution. The idea here isn't to stop people from clicking on links or opening attachments, at least not in this solution. Instead, they allow them to do so in a secure manner that won't compromise the endpoints or the other systems. It does a really good job at relating UBA solutions to real-world examples. As always, I'll leave a link in the show notes. Our next article comes from Paul Ducklin at Sophos, and it's titled, One Lousy Click: The Phishing Blunder That Sank an Entire Product. I debated putting this one in with the other news this week, but that segment filled up pretty quickly after the busy week that we've had in the InfoSec world. Copy-phish, a Chrome browser plugin that allows users to convert media files into text, was compromised recently in a very bad way. Essentially, the developer for the plugin received an email claiming to be from Google and said that their plugin didn't comply with the Chrome Web Store rules, and it might be removed. It suggested that the reader log into their Google developer dashboard and review their product. The sender of the email even left a handy little link for the Copy-phish dashboard in the email to save the developer some time in looking it up. Of course, this was a phishing attack. The link went to a fake login screen and the developer entered his credentials. After that, all hell broke loose. Am I allowed to say hell? We'll see if iTunes flags this episode as explicit, because I'm really not sure. Anyway, the attackers took complete control over the Copy-phish product, and both users and Copy-phish employees started seeing more ads and web scams than normal. It didn't take long for them to realize that this was actually coming from their own product. That's because the attackers modified the Copy-phish code and released their own plugin update, which was installed on victim computers automatically. Eventually, Copy-phish was able to get the ad server being used in this attack blocked and get access to their product dashboard again. I don't think I need to insert any jokes here about Copy-phish getting phished. I'll leave that up to you guys. The article then goes on to identify ways to protect against this type of attack. Here's the tips. Don't click on login links that you receive in emails. This applies to absolutely any emails you receive. Seriously, don't do it. I think I've finally gotten my wife on board with this simple protection strategy so the users in our organizations, and even the developers, can pick up on this. All it takes is a little bit of training. Use multi-factor authentication. In this case, Google even has their own solution in the Google Authenticator app, and it would have stopped this attack before it started. Now, I really like this next tip, and it's one that I don't see very often. It's that you shouldn't feel pressured to respond quickly when you get bad news. Now, this isn't just a phishing tip, it's one for life. Phishing attacks and other social engineer strategies, as I'm learning in the book called Social Engineering, the Art of Human Hacking, I mentioned that last week. Anyway, these strategies and attacks take advantage of panic and urgency to get people to do things that they normally wouldn't. Don't fall for it. The last tip kind of falls in line with the first one. Verify contact information and links from external sources, not the ones provided in emails. So what did you think about this article? It's another real-world example of how technology and training can reduce the risks associated with insider threat. The third article comes from Roxanne Minot at Bigger Law Firm Magazine, and it's titled, How to Keep Data Secure on Devices That Leave the Office. So here's a quote from the article. An important issue confronting many professionals, including lawyers, is how to safeguard their personal devices, such as laptops or tablets, while they're at the office. There are certain steps that lawyers can take to secure their devices and the client data they contain in the event of loss or theft. Now, from the start, I'm already liking this article, as long as you can get past the ads that pop up as soon as you click on the link, that is. I wrote a blog post a few years ago that outlined the need for employer-provided security, and I'll leave a link to it in the show notes for anyone who wants to check it out. One of the keys, in my opinion, to increasing the security culture of an organization is to start in the home. Give the employees skills that they can use to protect their homes and families, something that they'll certainly take an interest in, then pivot to protecting the organization. How many people in your organization take their work home with them? How many times have you toiled away at a PowerPoint slide deck in the wee hours of the morning because you had to present it at 8 a.m. and didn't even find out about the meeting until you checked your email right before you went to bed? It certainly happened to me. What do you do in such a case if you don't have your corporate laptop? Whether it's good security practice or not, you would do what just about everyone else is going to do. You fire up your personal computer and get it done. Any malware on your computer or sensitive information in the documents that you create could present a risk to your organization. That means your organization has a vested interest in the security of your personal devices. I won't go into the protection methods mentioned in this article too much, since I view its basic security hygiene and includes things like strong passwords, full disk encryption, multi-factor authentication, patching, and avoiding malware when possible. It also says to use device location solutions like Find My Mac, if you're a Mac user, of course. So what does your organization do to help employees protect their personal devices? If you really think about it, personal devices are actually an additional attack vector, and teaching employees how to protect them can serve as a catalyst for improving the security culture as well. The last article this week comes from Kim Crawley at Sophos and is titled, Fired Employee Caught by Keylogger Wins Case. This is another one that could have been in the news segment. It was a case in Germany where an employee was fired because they were caught coding a personal or external application while on their work computer. That seems pretty cut and dry. Most organizations have a policy that says you can't work on personal or, heaven forbid, another company's applications or websites while using organizational devices. So what's the issue then? Well, the company was using keyloggers, screen captures, and other user behavior monitoring solutions to monitor user activities. They released an email to the employees stating that internet traffic would be recorded and saved, but they never said anything about keystrokes or screenshots. That's why the judge ruled in favor of the employee, who was suing for wrongful dismissal. If the company had been more open about the types of monitoring that was in place, this probably would have been a different story. Not only would the ruling have gone the other way, but you could argue that the employee wouldn't have been working on the external application to begin with. Transparency, in this case, as in most cases, might have served as a deterrent for prohibited activities. Do you know what the rules are where your company resides? As of today, we've had listeners from 28 different countries. I'd wager that the laws related to this in each country is different. And if your organization is thinking about implementing a monitoring solution, you should probably know what these laws are. So our vendor segment this week is a little bit different. It isn't highlighting a specific vendor or product, but instead talks about the business opportunities in the information security industry, especially when it comes to insider threat. This article is written by Isaac Cohen from Terramind and is featured on the Channel Partners website. He says that, according to Bloomberg Government, insider threat has a $1 billion market for private sector organizations and perhaps even more for the public sector. He says that as awareness of insider threat increased through the high-profile attacks in the news, clients can be influenced to realize the benefits of proactively investing in solutions that tackle the problem instead of implementing them after the incident has occurred. In order to take advantage of the huge business opportunity here, security solution and product vendors have to understand both the insider threat problem and the specific needs of their current or potential customers. He suggested following the news, blogs, and of course I would also add podcasts to stay up to date on new technologies and methodologies in this space. With that, a security service provider can have a list of options available that'll fit the client environment and budget. Having current knowledge of the problem and solutions will also increase vendor-client trust, which could have an impact on future business. So we haven't spoken about the business opportunities associated with insider threat before, but I thought it was an interesting concept. Many of our listeners are actually in the vendor space, and I wanted to throw a bone your way too. Our thought of the week comes from Steve Jobs, and I think it relates very well to the topics this week. He said, "Technology is nothing. What's important is that you have a faith in people, that they're basically good and smart, and if you give them tools, they'll do wonderful things with them." Thank you for listening to episode 13 of the Insider Threat Podcast. Please remember to subscribe and review in your favorite podcast app, and also share with everyone you know. Those reviews are key to building this out and improving for later episodes, so please feel free to leave suggestions. You can contact me on Twitter @Steve Higdon, or send an email to steve@theinsiderthreatpodcast.com. Join our Reddit community and discussions on the subreddit named Insider Threat. As always, if you have a hard time finding it, just shoot me an email. The subreddit is also where you'll find the show notes for this and any other episode, as well as links to the topics we covered. If you go to the website, you can also find a link to the Patreon page, and you can subscribe to the newsletter to get up-to-date information on current episodes and news for the show. Thanks again, and I'll see you folks next time.